It all goes back to that long-term sales pipeline that maybe in 9 months down the road when a contract expires, there's an opportunity there. That's really what Arsenal does best, I feel, is that they help you establish a long-term sales funnel, and as opposed to getting lucky by making a few cold calls and getting an appointment off the bat, which is great. It's a bonus, but the real value is the long-term goals. Hi, I'm Kenny Riley. I'm the owner of Velocity IT, and I'm a returning client to Arsenal Business Growth. I first heard of Arsenal Business Growth by getting a cold call from Sean introducing them and their SDR services in the MSP vertical. At the time, all of our leads and all of our new customer acquisition was coming from word of mouth referrals and people that were finding us on the internet. And while that was definitely a suitable way to obtain new clients, we didn't have anything as far as a strategy for a long-term sales funnel. And that's where Arsenal came in to help produce that for us. So when we first started working with Arsenal Business Growth, we were a smaller organization with a bit of a tighter budget. We were doing about $500,000 a year. And so obviously the monthly fee that was associated with Arsenal services was a bit on the high end for us at the time and was more of an investment. Looking back on it now, I think our expectations were a little unrealistic in terms of when to expect an ROI, and we really didn't give it the full chance that we should have to really see the value long term. So we eventually mutually parted ways, probably within 3 or 4 months after we didn't really get anything worth closing in terms of leads. But ultimately, we grew as an organization through word of mouth referrals and new customer acquisition, just finding us on the web and things of that nature. It's been about 3 years, and now we're a little under $3 million a year. But again, we still have that same challenge of not having a long-term sales funnel. Luckily, we don't deal with customer churn very often, but it does happen. And when it has happened to us, it's usually been due to customer acquisitions and things like that are outside of our control. So we had to shift our focus back to figuring out how to establish a long-term sales funnel, either by bringing a sales rep in-house or looking at outsourcing it again. And I'm familiar that there's other competitors to Arsenal out there that we did evaluate. But at the same time, I had a good feeling and a good relationship with Aaron in the past, and I wanted to reach out to him to see if our market was available, if there was an opportunity to work together again. And luckily there was, so we came back on board, and it's only been 30 days since we've been back on board with our second go-around with Arsenal, but to be honest with you, we've already gotten one appointment from our rep, Alex, already. So I got a proposal already ready to go. I have a meeting with that prospect next Tuesday, and a pretty good chance of closing based upon the first meeting I have with them. So all in all, things are headed in the right direction. Yeah, I think the partnership is all about how you present it and how you nurture it in a way. Because when we first started working with Arsenal, we viewed Arsenal as nothing more than another vendor that we write a check to every month. This go around, we treat Alex, our SDR, we view him as an actual employee of our company because he's representing our brand to all of the prospects that he's calling. And so for us, the partnership is treating our SDR as if he's one of our own, and having that transparent relationship back and forth and being able to collaborate together efficiently. Yeah, I mean, the obvious strong point to me of Arsenal is the fact that they focus on the MSP vertical. I think that maybe some of their competition says they do, but Arsenal really is MSP focused. So their SDRs already understand a lot of our terminology. They understand our business model. I think half the challenge of trying to, do a cold calling campaign with an outsourced company is just getting them to understand what they're selling. And so with Arsenal, you bypass that completely because they already understand our product. They understand what we sell. They understand our value proposition. And all of that learning curve is not a factor with Arsenal. I used to think cold calling is dead, but obviously results show that it's not. I think that there are obviously more effective marketing strategies that are maybe a little bit more cost effective in terms of an ROI of what you get. That doesn't mean that cold calling doesn't work though. Cold calling is just one of those methods that you should use on top of everything else that you're doing. Getting leads from your website's great, going to networking events is great, SEO is great, but cold calling is a very valuable piece of that. And the chances are, even though our appointment that we got this month was kind of one of those right place, right time appointments where it was the first phone call and then appointment was set, realistically, you're nurturing that, your SDR is nurturing that relationship over the course of a long period of time to get to a point to where there is a need for your services or there is a need to have a chat about possibly bringing us on as their next managed IT provider. So for us, it's more of a strategic avenue for everything else that we're already doing for marketing and sales. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been working with Alex now for just about a month, so the relationship is still very new. But I was really thrilled to be working with him to begin with. I was actually referred to picking him from Aaron. Apparently he's a rock star, and apparently Aaron led us in the right direction. But from day one, Alex was very receptive and enthusiastic about being able to represent our brand and help us achieve growth in a long-term sales funnel. So he's been a pleasure to work with since day one, and we're looking forward to it for the long term. Man, that's tricky because even though I know the value add that I know what the process looks like, right? But when it comes to what you guys could do better, I mean, I don't know how to answer that, because if there was something that was an issue, it would be something I would bring to our SDR immediately and just address it that way versus letting something that I'm unsatisfied with go on for an extended amount of time. But yeah, I mean, I just don't have, there's nothing to comment on that because I don't have anything negative to say so far. So the results thus far, we've been onboarded this is our first month, and realistically speaking, it takes 2 or 3 months probably to build a sales pipeline and to start getting things in terms of actual sales appointments, whereas the first few months are more just establishing that pipeline. We obviously got lucky in my mind that we got an appointment. Alex set us an appointment in the first 30 days with a manufacturing company of 25 users. I went there and I spoke with the owner. We walked the facility. I had a really good rapport with them, and I have a proposal that I'm presenting next week. And I do expect for that to close just based upon the interaction that I've had with them. So I would say getting an appointment in the first 30 days it's amazing. Maybe not the most realistic thing in the world, but either way, I mean, it's been a positive experience so far, and we're looking forward to more appointments in the future. Yeah, there's pros and cons to I think bringing your sales efforts in-house versus outsourced, and the truth is there's pros and cons to each side. For us, the obvious pro to reestablishing our relationship with Arsenal was that we didn't have to have another body to manage, right? I mean, if you're bringing sales in-house, these are just more metrics you have to manage, another person you have to manage, you have to come up with some kind of a training curriculum, and you really have to manage that person day in and day out. And as an MSP, a growing MSP at that, our resources are pretty limited when it comes to managing. I mean, we manage our help desk and our project engineers and things like that on a daily basis. And for us, adding some more management to that plate wasn't something we were truly interested in. On the flip side, bringing somebody in-house for sales, they can definitely do the cold calling and the email campaigns and things like that. I think if you were to bring it in-house, the obvious pro would be you could utilize your sales rep for other things than just dials, like going to networking events and things of that nature. But for me, it was a non-factor because I do those events on my own. And really, I just wanted somebody to help establish a long-term sales pipeline, doing cold calls and email campaigns and things of that nature. And for me, it just made sense to return to Arsenal just based upon the interaction that I'd had with Aaron in the past and the needs of our business at the current time. So for me, the cost of Arsenal is easily worth it alone. I mean, the honest truth is to hire a qualified salesperson and set a commission plan for them, you're going to look at spending several times more over than what Arsenal is charging. So it's a great value. I prefer a mixture of both. To actually meet a prospect face to face, there's nothing that beats human interaction, and I think that helps sets the tone for a positive relationship going forward. Also, with a face-to-face interaction, we get a chance to see their operation, their facilities, put our eyes on the network, and kind of get an idea for what we're looking to support. There's value in that. When it comes to actually presenting a proposal, for me personally, I prefer a virtual meeting like Teams or something, because we have a sales PowerPoint of a bunch of bullet points about the pros and cons of our IT services and all of our offerings, and it's easier to go through that over a PowerPoint presentation virtually than sit in a conference room and do it. So I think there's value on both sides. I think for the initial interaction, nothing beats an in-person meeting. When it comes to actually presenting a sales proposal, I find more value of doing that virtually. For us, we picked the revenue sharing plan mainly because of it's more cost effective for us on a monthly basis. But on the flip side, I think it gives the RSDR Alex a lot more encouragement to get us deals to close because he's financially incentivized by that versus the flat rate plan, which is more expensive every month for us. And I believe the SDR gets some sort of a client retainment bonus with that, but ultimately I feel that the revenue sharing plan is more incentivized for the SDRs to do a better job because their income is basically uncapped at that point. Yeah, I mean, the competition that I'm aware of that Arsenal has with them, I mean, there's a lot of companies that do what Arsenal does to a certain degree, but I don't feel that there are a lot of companies that are as effective as they are when it comes to marketing an MSP, simply because of their knowledge of what we do on a daily basis, the terminology that's used, and just understanding our business model. That's the biggest hurdle I feel whenever you work with another company that does outsourced cold calling. I mean, I don't think it takes, there's nothing special about picking up the phone and dialing a bunch of numbers out of a database, but really understanding what you're selling and giving a positive image for the company that you're representing. That's where I feel that sets Arsenal apart from their competition. Yeah, I mean, ultimately the future for us is just to have a healthy long-term sales funnel that we can nurture over time. And like I said, we have customers that it's inevitable. You're going to have customers drop off the map, especially in our market. We service the small to medium business vertical, and there are acquisitions that happen every year, right? And so there's going to be some form of customer churn there, and we need to have an action plan to deal with that customer churn. And again, marketing yourself on the internet and things of that nature and expecting customers to come and find you, that's definitely one avenue, but nothing beats really going out there and establishing relationships for the long term. And for us, that's really where the future lies, is having that long-term sales funnel that we can nurture over time and hopefully, win some additional partnerships through it and help propel our business to the next level. So right now our pipeline, it's still very new because we're in the first 30 days with Arsenal. However, our SDR, Alex, landed us an appointment with a manufacturing firm. I got a proposal out for that. It's $2,375 a month. I have a meeting next week to potentially close that, hopefully. And if I do, that would be a 3-year value of about $85,000. My advice would be to go into it with realistic expectations, because we're a returning client with Arsenal simply because our first go around our expectations were unrealistic, and I think that having realistic expectations would be in your best interest when it comes to having a successful partnership. Having the expectations that you're probably not going to get an appointment in your first month, but if you do, like we did, great. But it was totally unexpected. But ultimately, if you set your expectations to be realistic, then it would be a good partnership in the long run for your long-term sales funnel. Yeah, no, I would definitely recommend Arsenal to anybody that I know. I just feel that Arsenal is very hands-on with their customers. They want to see them succeed, and their interaction, it shows that they have a vested interest in our business to help us grow. And I feel like you don't get that with some of their competition. You're just another account, right? With Arsenal, I feel like they actually care about our growth. Closing thoughts, we're happy we have the second opportunity to come back around and work with Aaron and Arsenal. Luckily, the cards aligned. Our market was open, and we were able to come back and reestablish our partnership. And we're looking forward to the future, and hopefully, we're going to be a long-term client for the foreseeable future. If Arsenal's business offering didn't work, they wouldn't go from a 200 square foot closet to a, how many square feet? 60,000. 60,000 square feet. Building. I mean, obviously, it takes money to make all that happen, and that means they've been growing steadily in their clientele, and they're obviously doing something right. That's for sure.
Which is why this is such a cool story, because I mean, you were one of our very first clients, right?
Yeah.
When we did only have a couple guys.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is you took some time off.
Sure.
You worked with us for a little bit. Mm. You canceled services. You went and freaking grew your business a ton, a lot.
Yeah.
If you don't mind sharing, what when you were working with us, you were approximately what size? Where were you at? And then since that time, up until now, how much have you grown?
Yeah, when we first started, we were at about 500, maybe 500K a year, something like that. It was pretty good for us only being in business for probably about a year and a half. But at the time that we mutually parted ways from Arsenal, we went from 500K a year, and this year we're going to hit 3 mil this year, and that's been about 3 years. So the growth has been crazy for us. And all that growth for us has been coming through word of mouth referrals. We also work with a digital marketing company that does a lot of our SEO and our online digital marketing to kind of help prospects find us. And it's worked for sure, but we've always had that missing piece of not having a long-term sales funnel. And that was the missing piece that really got me back to thinking, I wonder what Aaron's up to, and
Yeah.
so that's why I reached out to you, because ultimately that was the next step for us is, sitting by idly and waiting for someone to find you on the internet. It's great. There's a market for it. I mean, we've made a business of that, obviously, and we grew healthily. But for us to make that next step, I mean, we got to do something else.
Yeah, and it's not like you were just sitting there waiting for somebody to find it. I mean, you were spending money on
Sure.
SEO, and you were trying to get people to
Yeah,
find
we
you,
were
right?
done. So ultimately, whenever we ended the relationship with Arsenal the first time, we took those funds and put it into digital marketing, because at the time, as a smaller company with a smaller budget,
Yeah.
in my opinion or my mind at the time, it made sense to take that money and put it into something that was more of a long-term strategy, as opposed to cold calling or door knocking, which can be seen as a short-term strategy.
Yeah.
It's funny that I viewed it that way, though, because now in hindsight, I actually see it totally different. Right? Because at the time, I thought it was cold calling and door knocking basically to go get an appointment immediately, versus establishing these relationships with the prospects that you all are calling, and then maybe 9 months down the road they need us, but at least we're nurturing that lead over the course of time. And that's the long-term strategy of what you all do that I just was too blind to see early on in our days. So ultimately, those funds that we were using for Arsenal were going all into digital marketing. And don't get me wrong, we had an ROI and we were making money, obviously, and it's great. But we eventually did hit a wall in our business where it was like, okay, we have to take that next step. I mean, having great web presence and high Google rankings and a lot of Google reviews and people finding us on the internet, it's worked. But we need to take that next step to have a long-term sales funnel, because like any business, we deal with churn, just like you guys probably do. But the churn we deal with, I can happily say, is not because we're providing bad service to our customers. It's just the life cycle of the small to medium business size market that we deal with, that acquisitions happen every day, and we've lost customers to acquisitions. So, but there has to be a strategy to replace those customers long term, and that's ultimately what having a sales funnel is for. It's to replace that churn over time.
So when we were grabbing lunch, and on the drive over there, you were talking about your win percentage and such on inbound leads. And it kind of reminds me, it's almost like it's the opposite. The inbound leads are the short-term, I don't want to say short-term deals, but they close maybe a little quicker. And the outbound ones, sometimes they close quick, but it seems like you can see them coming from around the bend.
Right.
Did you experience something similar to that, or?
Well, for me, whenever I have to deal with leads that come inbound of prospects that are finding us on the internet, or even a word-of-mouth referral, I mean, honestly, half the job's already done by the time I even get on the phone with them, right? Because they've either talked to somebody that's a customer of ours, they've already got an understanding for the level of services that we provide, or they found us on the internet. We have over 40 5-star Google reviews. I mean, people can hear from our customers in terms of their level of satisfaction. So generally, they already are interested in our services. They already have seen some social proof in terms of what it's like to work with us. So by the time we get on the phone, it's just a matter of us being able to show that we can give them what they're looking for at a good value. So that being said, I mean, our close rate is like 90% for anything inbound for the most part. But when you're doing a campaign like we're doing with Arsenal, where you're actually going out looking for the business, then that's where you have to really set your expectations to be a little bit more realistic, right? There's no way that we're going to go close 90% of cold calls that we get a meeting with, right? I mean, because ultimately we're looking to bring people on for a service that they may or may not need at the time. Also, we're in a big market. We're in Dallas, right? So there's hundreds and hundreds of MSPs in Dallas, and the chances of us getting a cold call to a business that's not already engaged with an MSP, it's pretty low, honestly. And if they're not engaged with an MSP, that produces a new set of challenges, right? They probably have never worked with an IT company in the past. They have no idea what our service offering is, and so that's a challenge in itself to sell that to somebody that's never had to purchase that in the past.
So we work with a lot of managed IT companies, and it seems like everybody's got a different flavor, like, or preference. We talk to guys, and they will say, I only want to work with people who are not in contract. We work with other guys who say, no way do I want to talk to somebody that's never worked with an MSP before. In fact, I prefer that they're already under contract, and I'd like to wiggle them out or convince them to cancel and come sign with me. We've got guys that do, what do you want to call it, co-managed environments. They will help exist. And I think the first appointment since you've come back, is it an opportunity kind of like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, so the guy that's doing the IT for the current prospect that we were handed within our first month here, he's not He is doing the IT. It's not his primary role in the company. Sharp guy though, really. But ultimately, he is trying to get that off of his plate and focus more on what he does on a daily basis, which is facilities and maintenance. So in a way, it's co-managed because he has knowledge of the environment inside and out since he's been managing it for 15 years. But he's looking to transition and pass that off to us in the long term to free himself up. But we do both arrangements. We do co-managed IT and full-blown managed IT. So we have relationships on both ends.
Are you finding, the industry's going one way or another? Do you prefer fully managed IT? Do you enjoy working with guys when it's co-managed? Do you see that, companies are starting to move towards a hybrid environment, or if they're just totally outsourcing stuff? What are things that you're noticing?
Yeah, I think that the co-managed environment has its pros and cons. It really just depends on the customer size, right? I mean, if we're dealing with a customer with 50 employees, and there's really not a need for a co-managed engagement. Typically, the co-managed engagement makes sense when we're talking 100 employees and up, where there's just so much noise that hits our help desk on a daily basis and creates additional needs for labor. That's where the co-managed really helps. And it also helps to have an advocate on the client side that actually understands what it is that we do. So whenever we have to communicate, hey, this is getting old and has to get replaced, or B, we see this ticket come in every single week, we can do this to fix it long term. They actually understand that concept versus sitting in front of somebody from HR, which they don't know anything about technology when it comes to how what we do on a daily basis and kind of the value that we bring. So having an advocate in a co-managed arrangement is a huge benefit. But it all depends on what size customers you're dealing with. The smaller environments, it's better if we just handle everything from start to finish. But yeah, I mean, there's value in both ways. I think that nowadays with cybersecurity and all the different levels of services that MSPs are expected to offer, that the co-managed arrangement is going to get more and more common, because I think that companies are going to be more open-minded to bringing some of the day-to-day in-house, but outsourcing the things that they're not experts in. Like most companies are not experts in security, right? So they'll look to bring on a third party for something like that.
We've had some clients close some really nice deals. They've been a little larger, a little more complicated.
Right.
I think, the in-house team is a little weary of letting, a fox in the in-house, if that makes sense.
For sure.
But, it's a huge opportunity. I feel like there's not many companies that are doing it well.
No.
But really great. I mean, you're here for less than a month and you've already got an appointment out that's, gone to proposal. We're going to get some more, obviously, right? We don't just stop there, but it's nice that you can come, sign up. We can start calling. There are people who are currently experiencing issues, and you can I made the basketball analogy. When you start getting bigger, right? Your close rate starts going from 90%, 80%. And it gets a little lower. It's not a bad thing. You become the star, right? As you go from 500K, and I never miss. That's like the guy that comes off the bench that only shoots layups or slam dunks.
Right.
He scores like 4 points a game, right?
Right, yeah.
He would be Michael Jordan. You got to take some of those longer shots, and those outbound meetings are kind of like that.
Nobody catches all those wins without taking some L's in the process.
Right. I mean, you got to. And nobody's counting your win percentage.
No.
I've never paid my taxes with my close rate.
The only person that's counting your win percentage is yourself. You're in competition with yourself at that point. But you got to be realistic, right? I mean, if you're at 500K a year and you're able to close 90% of your deals like I was, well, that's great. But those were all warm referrals. It would be pretty bad if I was getting sent warm referrals and only closing 20%. I'm clearly doing something wrong.
Yeah.
But ultimately, as you scale your business and you get to a certain size, then obviously your close rate's going to drop down. It's going to drop down, and I don't know what the percentage is, but ultimately, if you're going out looking for business versus sitting back waiting for them to come to you, then naturally you're going to have a lower close rate. But it's all about taking more of those shots, and you'll end up closing that business. And so coming back to Arsenal for us, that's where I have that mindset now, because I'm further along in my business venture than I was when we first worked together. That I understand, hey, you know what? In 12 months, maybe I get 6 appointments and maybe only 1 or 2 of those close. But during that 12 months, how many people did you guys talk to, right? And then ultimately, in a year down the road or 2 years down the road, when their MSP contracts expire and our SDR is checking in on a quarterly basis, that's that long-term funnel that's going to drive that growth.
Yeah.
So
I think it's something that goes by unnoticed for a lot of clients and maybe prospects that are considering us. If you're marketing or if you're advertising, you want to get your name out in front of prospects. And even if you're just calling CEOs and you're leaving a voicemail, with Velocity IT, right? In the voicemail, they're hearing it.
Yeah, it's just it's brand recognition is all it is. So by the time that their contract with their MSP expires and maybe they're wanting to evaluate, they've already heard your name before.
Yeah.
You know, and they're going to think of that, especially whenever someone follows up and says, "Hey, you know, I'm so and so with Velocity IT, just checking to see how things are going." "Oh yeah, I remember you talked to me about it 6 months ago. Actually, our contract's going up." You know, and you're subconsciously creating that relationship before it even happens.
Or even if they can't remember your name and they get online and they type in Managed IT Dallas and they go, "What was the name of that company?"
Yeah.
What was I can't remember their name. And then Velocity.
And it pops up.
Right.
I remember
then that SEO pays off, right?
It does, and it does pay off, but it also pays off in the long run too. Whenever that opportunity actually comes to fruition, and you're sitting in front of a decision maker, and they've already heard who you are, they kind of have an idea of what it is you do. And if you've been touching base with them over the course of a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year, then obviously they have that feeling like these guys, they want our business and they want what's best for us, versus interviewing an MSP that they've never heard of, or maybe they don't have any communications with in the past. It's an easier way in from the long run, and now they're open to that opportunity. And who knows what the size of it is, but let's say it closes and it's a $10,000 a month contract. Well, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, it took a year for that to close. But to me, that's the real win. It's something that was been in the works for over a year that you finally were able to close, as opposed to your SDR, getting a lucky call. It's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But the real wins to me are the more long-term prospects that close when the need finally arises, right? Because if you're not doing what Arsenal is doing and nurturing these leads over time, then those opportunities are never going to happen, right? You've got to have some kind of a long-term lead nurturing process.
Yeah, and it's almost like you got to be doing it because somewhere your competition is.
Yeah, if you're not doing it, your competition is, right? And so we're in the DFW market in Texas, which is incredibly saturated with MSPs, right? And so that's why we, from a marketing standpoint, we do everything, right, to get our name out there and stand out. We do digital marketing, SEO, cold calling, networking events, you name it, because that's really what sets us apart from other MSPs in the area.
Do you structure your clients to come on with 1-year agreements? Are they locked in, or is it a certain notice of cancellation? Are they month to month? How do you typically bring clients on?
This is going to upset a lot of MSPs whenever I tell them what we do, because they think there's a lot of MSPs out there that want to live and die by contracts, right? They want to lock their customers into agreements for a year and 3 years, and I get it. It's because it helps you from a business valuation standpoint in the event you want to exit the business. The general consensus is if you don't have contracts, you're worth nothing. So that being said, I do understand, but for our side of things, one of the reasons that we've grown so quickly and we went from 500K to 3 million is we're flexible. We don't just waltz into someone's office and say, this is the way it's going to be. These are our terms. Like it or not, I can walk out the door if you don't want to see you. And really being able to understand that, hey, this prospect has no idea who we are. They've never worked with us in the past. Me asking them to sign a 3-year agreement, that's asking for a lot, right?
Yeah.
Versus coming in and saying, hey, I understand this is a new relationship. We want to work with you, and we'll do it for no onboarding. We'll come in month to month. The agreement that we write is going to be on a 12-month term, so we can reevaluate it. But if you want to leave at any time, you can leave with a 30-day notice. It doesn't bother me whatsoever, because I have no interest in keeping an unhappy customer locked into an agreement that they don't want to be in, right? And so just being able to come in there and be flexible and want to earn their trust and earn their business and get in there and show what you can really do without making them sign their life away, for us it's been instrumental in our growth. And ultimately what ends up happening is after that first year goes by and you show what you can do and you establish that relationship, you can then come back when it's time to do a new agreement with them and say, hey, you know what? You can keep going month to month at this price, or you can sign a 3-year agreement and we'll give you X discount over the course of time. If they already have a working relationship with you, they're not afraid to sign that 3-year agreement.
Wow.
So, but you have to be open-minded to get in the door and build that rapport first before you start asking for the world like 3-year agreements.
All the success that has come to you, it's well-deserved, and anybody that listens to this, would you take a phone call or respond to an email from somebody that was in your situation a couple years ago? If there's a guy doing about $500,000, could he give you a call and ask you for advice or something like that?
For sure, I feel like that. Speaking with someone that's been in that position that can offer you some perspective to
Yeah.
kind of help push you along to get you to the
Yeah.
next level is valuable for sure. So, I've always been a very giving person to share my experiences with people, because I feel like if people can learn from what I've been through, then at least it's, to me, that's all about. That's what it's all about, right? I mean, building a successful business is definitely the reason why I set out to do what I do. But ultimately, if you can help somebody,
Yeah.
that's where it's at.
Yeah.
The big value add to me for Arsenal is the fact that they cater to the MSP industry, right? So they have the knowledge of the products that we sell, whereas maybe some of their competition doesn't. You have to train them throughout that process. But I mean, the partnership with Arsenal has been great, to the point that even though it's been brief for me, I haven't worked with Aaron for 5 years straight by any means. It's the impact of whenever we first worked together, and being able to call Aaron on his cell phone if we have an issue. I mean, how often do you have the CEO's cell phone of the vendors you pay every month? Probably not very many.
I answer the main line too. If you
Yeah.
call the main line,
Yeah.
I'll pick up.
So having someone that's accessible, obviously, goes to show that the value is there and that they want the best for you. And I network with quite a few MSPs out there. Some of them use some competitors to Arsenal, but I've also mentioned Arsenal to those MSPs, and Arsenal's gotten some phone calls from some of them. So clearly they're doing something right. Aaron's gone from a 200 square foot closet to a 60,000 square foot building. So again, the business model that he has apparently works, and they're doing something right around here. And I want to be part of that long term. So I'm happy to be back.
Awesome. Kenny, thank you so much,
Yeah.
man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Love having you here.
For sure.
And guys, if you got any questions, we can put Kenny's contact info in the YouTube information section, or maybe you just maybe we won't do that. How about you just call us, and then we'll get you in contact with Kenny.
Sounds like a
we
plan.
don't want not too many more cold calls, right?
I get enough of those.
You get enough of those. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.